everyone. Welcome to another episode of Entrepreneur Mind Speak. I'm Lauren with Crème de Mint, a branding and packaging design agency, and I'm here with my co-host, Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie from Tampa, and I run a web development agency called Cloud Create.
And today we have Kevin Gawronski on the call with us today. Kevin, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, us too. So talk to us, tell us about your business. Tell us about your agency, what you do, how you got into it.
Yeah, so we're a food, beverage, and CPG agency in the paid media space. I break it out into three parts. On one part, we have the retail media. So that's Instacart, Target through Roundel, Kroger, Whole Foods, Walmart, any retailer that has their own platform, we're probably bidding on it. On the other end, in the middle, we have Amazon, which is actually probably the smaller part of our business, and I'm still managing all of it. So just normal Amazon. And then on the other end, we have paid social, which could be direct to consumer awareness. That would include Meta, Instagram, programmatic, Google, and TikTok. So brands come to us. They say, hey, we're in, these retail chains. We have this budget. We want to sell some product online. We want to keep Amazon active. Whatever the situation is, we take their budgets, we allocate it, we launch things, and then we meet weekly or bi-weekly, which is pretty rare with agencies. And then on the calls, we're going over the metrics, things we need to slow down, things we need to scale, and all that good stuff.
And it sounds like you work with startups, all the way from startups all the way to large companies. Is that right?
Yeah, the way I put it is we have brands where you can go anywhere, including the airport, and you'll find their product there. And then we have other brands where it's people just starting out trying to drive sales on D2C, Amazon with hopes to eventually get into retail at some point.
And so for a new CPG brand with a small marketing budget, what would you recommend? Like, what should they prioritize first?
That's a very good question. So it 100% depends on where they are, because small can mean a bunch of different things. So if they are in any retailers, right, we will look at what their budget is. And if they are selling online, if they are on Amazon, and we'll say, what is your priority? If your priority is retail, then we get the list of retailers that they are in. Typically with smaller budgets, Instacart's going to be the best for that. Reason being is Instacart encompasses every retailer except for Whole Foods and like a handful of Walmarts. So if they're in retail, we say that's the number one place to put your money. It's going to spread out all of your impressions across basically all the retailers, wherever the UPC is. That's your best bang for your buck. On the other end, let's say that they're also, they started D2C, they're moving into retailer type thing. They're on Amazon. On the D2C side, then it's really going in and auditing where are you getting your sales from? What are your monthly Shopify sales? On the D2C side of things with food, beverage, and CPG, the two main players for us, it's Google. Google is essentially high intent. If somebody is actively searching for your product, your category, if it abides by like a niche diet or whatever, you're capturing intent from that. And then on the paid social side, breaking down where they should spend their money there, it's almost primarily going to go to Meta. Although it's been around the longest, Meta encompasses Instagram. It is still the best platform out of all of the platforms on the paid social search side of things. On the Meta side too, then it's really, if they're looking to drive their D2C sales, they have to understand prospecting is always going to cost a lot of money. Getting people to purchase on first, second impression for like an emerging brand is very difficult unless they're very unique. They have high credentials. Sometimes they're on Shark Tank and we leverage those ads. They're on the Today Show. We're leveraging that at prospecting. It speeds up the process. And then after that, in terms of like smaller brands where they should allocate their money on the D2C side, the funnel is very important. You walk into a lot of brands that they have tons of site visitors. They have people who have added to cart, but they haven't moved. You have people with a huge email list. So it's really one, prospecting is going to cost you a lot more. You have to crack that code. Retargeting generally is going to be a little bit cheaper. You have to nurture the people that are coming in from Google, who are coming in from prospecting. And then a lot of people aren't leveraging their email lists if they've been around for a little bit. So we like to break apart the email list, especially going into holiday right now. You could do your all-time list. Let's say like the purchase cycle of your product is like every 6 months. Like we'll make an audience of that email list. We call a win-back audience. We'll segment that out to get old customers back in the funnel and they're basically new at that point. So it really depends, like small brands, where they are. Are you in retail? Is retail a priority? If not, what channels are you on online? Direct to consumer, Google is the best bet for profitability, high intent, paid social prospecting, nurturing, all that stuff. I know people love TikTok. TikTok is good in certain scenarios. I myself am not the TikTok demographic, but you start adding on platforms outside of those core ones to just bring in untapped audiences to eventually convert.
It's fantastic overview that you just shared.
Yeah.
Very holistic approach. Like it's very much looking at all the various different sources, marketing channels that companies can use, which I think is so important, especially for the newer companies, to even have that holistic view.
And I think like exactly, and the important part is because you were asking like if you're a small brand, and I made up a scenario of a type of brand, your expectations need to change at every point of the funnel, right? So if you're really, really new, you can't expect to have a 3 times return on direct to consumer if you're starting out on your direct to consumer journey. Nobody knows who you are. That's the harsh reality. Like I understand these people love their brands and it's their baby and they're growing it. But at the beginning, it's you just have to show progress. On the retail side, it's the same thing. If you are getting into Target, which we were talking about before, if you just got on the shelves at Sprouts, we're going to do our best to move you as quickly as we can. But like what we're getting those first few months on direct to consumer, right when you get on the shelves on those retailers I was talking about, your expectations months 1 to 3 need to be different than months 4 to 6, right? Because these algorithms take time to learn. And then like even us as like media buyers, like we have to learn more about the brand. Like there's things that we don't know that you don't know that we're learning out that are really scalable. Or on the other end that we're wasting money that we felt was a for sure thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so much that you're learning about the customers, at the beginning, because if you're a brand new startup, you may think, oh, this is my ideal customer, but then it turns out somebody else is interested in your product that you didn't even realize is like actually going to end up being your core audience, which is so interesting when that happens, but it does.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the case. It's probably like 50-50 on that end. On the retail side of things, like you're really you're bidding on categories, you're bidding on keywords. Amazon's similar where it's categories and keywords. On that side of things, like you find out, we call like the adjacent category. So if you are, I'm trying to think of an example, one type of brand in a category, and we find like a similar type category, they're like, oh, if they're looking for that category, they might also like ours. Those are scalable, but like that's something we didn't think about going into it. We just found out there's that affinity. And then like on the paid social and like Google side of it, because paid social is targeting like the interest, even though Meta is going broader, like we'll get parameters from the client of we think it's women 45 to 65 who are interested in this. And then we'll run like a broader campaign and we'll find out it's actually like 25 to 34 and it's men that are purchasing this. So I think it's always smart to go in understanding like, yeah, this is who we're pretty sure is the consumer, but there could be some friction when like we find out something else. Like even if the results are good, sometimes the brands are like, hey, that's great, but we know it's 45 plus, or we know it's this. And you just have to have that discussion of like, the data is the data and it's telling us differently. And I'm managing your money and you got to put your money into what's working.
Yeah, that is so interesting, especially if they think that they have targeted their brand in a certain way and they're like, this is who it's going to sell to. And then it sells to somebody completely different. It just, wow, that must be a really interesting conversation you have to have with the brand owners.
And I think like the real winners on the other side of us, like they just roll with it and they just say, okay, great, that's what we're going to do. Unless it's something that is just blatantly very like temporary or near term, like if it's like the seasonal type keyword or audience but yeah, I think on the other end, like if they're willing to adjust to it, like we as media buyers in our team, like we have to scale what's working. So having that conversation, I think it's great learning for the brand. You learn more and more as you go up in tiers in terms of like who the actual consumer is.
When you get a new account, I'm sure you see some of the, whether it's incorrectly targeted ads or various other mistakes that brands can make that you kind of probably have to untangle often. What would be some of those mistakes off the top of your head that you're like, you just see it over and over, the brands making these same mistakes?
The one big thing I would say is like branded terms on retail and on Google are very controversial. So Adweek did a big article. I don't remember who it was, like Samsung or somebody. They cut all branded terms. So we might go in and see that somebody is spending way too much on branded terms. Branded terms, your return is going to be triple what your non-branded is anywhere else, even on retail, because it's people looking for the brand who are going to buy it. So brands will argue you want to cut that on Google or you want to cut that on Instacart and Target and all those other ones. Two things is number one, if you weren't bidding on that, somebody else would be bidding on that and you wouldn't show up. Like we've had them before where we cut them and we're on Instacart, like I can't even find my own product.
Oh
Then
my.
on the Google side, we use a back end called Triple Whale for like direct to consumer clients. And what Triple Whale does is it's kind of like a loophole to like all the iOS 14 security tracking issues, but it'll tell you if it's a new customer, which you don't get in the platforms. So if I go into AdWords, if I go into Meta, it just tells you the sales number. It doesn't tell you they're a new customer or not. And what we find out is like on the AdWords side of things on Google, I think most of our brands, it's like 80% plus of the branded purchases are new customers. So you have to think if you go in and you weren't bidding on found you in the first place, right? Or would they have just totally lost their consumer journey and gave up on you? So I think branded is like a really hot topic. And then on the other end, it's like you come into some of these and we don't do a percentage of spend as our fee, just to be clear. So there's no incentive for us to tell people to spend like crazy just so we could put our fees up and make more money on it. But there's some accounts that you come into in terms of like what the mistakes are, which is what you brought up. And there's things that are sitting there that are insanely profitable. We have several brands running on the same platforms. They're not getting that close to a return. And you have to have that conversation of like, I don't know why you guys didn't double the budget during this time period. And a lot of the times it ends up like whoever the previous agency was, they just hadn't been checking it at all. So that's why those weekly calls are important because like you have to talk about the data. The client could see if something's doing well and on the call to go, hey, I love that. Spend more money on it. Do you guys agree? We'll say, sounds good to us. And that's what we're getting paid for, is to scale the accounts.
What should they be tracking if they want to know if their campaigns are actually working? Like, what are you tracking?
So early stage brands are not going to care about new customers because the majority of their brands are new customers. I mean, to us, it's like on the D2C side or on the retail side, it's are you looking at cost per purchase or are you looking at return on ad spend? Cost per purchase is a little more straightforward if all the products cost the same amount. Obviously, it gets messy if you have some that are $10 more than the other. And then on the other end, it's the return. So return on ad spend. What did I spend? What did I get in return? Those are the real numbers they should all be looking at. And it seems very cliche, but like that's how you map out your profitability. And if they're paying close attention to those numbers, and we do a 3-month trial because we think after 3 months you get like a good grasp on retail, Amazon, D2C, whatever, on like what your numbers are going to be. Obviously, brands have seasonality where things are easier and harder. So the numbers are inflated based on seasonality. But really, like it's return, it's cost per acquisition. If you're an early brand, that's what you're looking at. If you have been around for 5-6 years, whatever, you start to look at on Instacart, it's new to brand percentage. On the D2C side, it's new customer percentage because you need a full funnel at a certain point versus like when you're a newer brand, you just got to get trial and just get people to try the product.
Brands these days, they'll do all platforms often, or a lot of platforms, right? And you have so many niche ones too, like Reddit, and then you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have your newsletters, and all these various different channels for people to market through. And I notice in working with brands that they struggle being able to really target exactly where the sales and where that revenue is exactly coming from. And it's always a bit of a generality because somebody can see the ad, come through a couple times on Instagram, then maybe they see it on TikTok, then maybe they get a newsletter. How do you deal with that also in communicating with your clients so that they can get a good idea of the return on investment, even if it's not necessarily directly from an ad? Sometimes you get those indirect purchases. How
Right.
do you deal with that?
So on the retail side, it's just attribution windows. Like some are 7 days, 14 days. I think Target has up to 21. So that's easier. It's just like the numbers might not look what like they are until like the month's over. Then we repull the previous month. But then like on the D2C side, and again, Amazon is straightforward. The attribution's like instant on Amazon. On the D2C side, it's very, very tricky because your numbers, like if you pull it from the platform, your sales numbers on paid social, if you're adding that on top of the other active platforms, such as Google, it could be higher than your total Shopify sales. And the big issue is the last click. So if I see a paid social ad and then I go to Google, search a brand name, click through and buy it, and the platforms are going to see sales that are attributed to both. Nobody could solve that. So we have 2 ways of doing it. And it's mostly like a D2C question. Triple Whale's been really great because you could pull like the last click on it, like to the dot. So it's going to make the numbers look way worse. But there's instances where Triple Whale, which is like the raw, very cold, like probably more pessimistic view of things, is going to show that last click. There's times where it matches up because that is what the platform is. So like on Google, we have certain ones where there's no overlap between the two, and like they are actually first click getting purchases through Google. But then yeah, like tools like Triple Whale, just understanding like the customer journey, because Triple Whale will tell you they saw 4 meta ads. A week later, they searched the brands and then they bought it. And then if they buy again, we can go back and see that history of like, oh, originally they came in through paid social, bought through Google. 2 months later, they came in through paid social again. So that's like our kind of solution to it. I don't think anybody has a sound solution to it unless it's like Ogilvy or like one of those huge agencies is paying for some sort of like tech at this point that exists for it. So that's how we get around it. And especially with smaller brands, it's so easy to dive into that because like you have less sales. A lot of the times the bigger brands, it's just more on like a higher level of, is there overlap between Google and Meta? So then if Google isn't looking as good, we at least know they're being retargeted on Meta and we'll keep Google on type thing. So that's our approach to it. I mean, it's pretty standard. Triple Whale helps a lot in terms of determining where the sales are going.
Thank you so much. That already cleared it up for me a lot, and also to be able to give that recommendation to our clients, because we're not on the marketing side, but since we do a lot with Klaviyo and help install various different channels or set up the APIs, we do get those questions, and it stumps every time. And the analytics for each of these platforms, like Klaviyo wants to attribute everything. Everything came from a newsletter, and
right,
they
yeah,
kind of behave that way.
because none of them play nice with each other, right? I mean, that's why Whole Foods isn't on Instacart because they're owned by Amazon. They're not going to give them anything. So yeah, that gets tricky, and you're noticing that more and more. Instacart's starting to integrate with a lot of these because I don't know why they wouldn't, like paid social, Google, all that. There's no like turf that they have to defend really. But yeah, some of these other ones, Amazon especially with like paid social and some of these, you get like they're never going to tell you how any of those intertwine with each other. It's really difficult.
So let's talk a little bit about budget. So with startups, how can startups get meaningful results without a massive spend, like ad spend? Can you break down like what a typical ad spend looks like for a new brand and what your
Sure.
agency charges to manage those campaigns?
So number one is the timing of when you're spending, right? So if a brand came to us today going into holiday, we would probably recommend that they start spending more than they would if it was like July, just because consumer behaviors are going to be higher. And we've actually gotten a couple smaller ones we're starting with next week. We're doing like a 2-month trial. They just want to see how Shopify goes. We're going to push gifting, stocking stuffers, all that fun stuff. So the timing is important of it. But like if I had a brand that was like a non-perishable, for example, your easiest path of where to start profitability wise, although they are a pain, Amazon, if you can get it FBA approval, which for anyone listening means like you're eligible through Prime and you can get it in 2 days. That is your quickest path. That is people who are looking to buy something right now. They are high intent in which you're searching. If you show up, great. You could scale that. You're going to have to deal with the FBA fees and all that stuff. But if you have like a light product that makes sense, the fees make sense, that's your quickest path to scaling. The bad part is Amazon can shut you down. They don't give you any information. On the other end of it, if again, smaller brands is typically D2C and Amazon before they get retail. To me, Google, like similar to Amazon, is just capturing that intent. Google has moved to be very like creative oriented with display. It integrates YouTube Shorts, all that. But even just running like a PMAX campaign is going to pull in the top keywords from your listing on your Shopify, and then it's going to integrate those in the campaign. We don't have control, but like letting the algorithm run there usually does well. And then on the other end, just like a non-branded campaign, like if your product really is different and your competitors don't have the same ingredients, or if they do have something that people don't want in it, like you can go on to SEMrush, which is another tool we have, look up what is the competition on this, what is the volume on it, and then that's where you can get the best bang for your buck. So if I was a newer brand, I mean, those are the two places I would start. And then eventually you rev up paid social. And then on paid social, it's the visual. If I come in through Google, now I'm being served a nice ad of like a mom and their kids in the kitchen eating the product. Everyone's doing this, like kind of showing the usage of it. So I think like you could start to stagger those at some point. And in terms of spend, like we have a minimum, obviously, as an agency. So we would like people to spend up to a certain amount. But I mean, we have brands that spend $3,000 a month, and you're starting with 500 on Amazon, 1,500 on Google, and then the other whatever's left in that, like you're waiting to see where the results are coming on to scale that month. So you don't need big budgets to start this stuff. And then a lot of these brands try to do it themselves. That's fine. That's going to work for like 2 months, but eventually you need someone like us to come in and take over.
That's very encouraging, I feel like, for the smaller brands to hear that from a professional that you can start smaller and it's okay to scale from smaller, especially nowadays. Like, 10 years ago, starting in e-commerce was like, oh, you could put in whatever, $500 a week or something like that and expect to get somewhere. And it's gotten very intimidating with all these big DTC brands nowadays. So I think that's really nice for our listeners to hear that you can have a smaller budget and maybe you're going to scale slightly smaller or slightly slower, I mean. But it's great to hear that you can make progress that way.
But wouldn't you rather scale slower than waste $10,000? Because that's what they do is they'll come to us and be like, oh, well, why wouldn't we just spend $10,000 after we had a good month of three? Because that's two totally different tiers of spending. Like anything, you're going for everything in the inner circle. Like now, the more you spend, you're going for a large, it's not as easy when you get to that point.
Yeah.
So, and I think the other part of it too with this spending and people thinking you have to spend all this money, it's just years and years of agencies charging a percentage of ad spend and being like, they're not worth it if they don't spend 10 grand. So that's why we don't do that percentage.
You mentioned like 3,000 for ad spend. What would that look like if they spend 3 months with you, and they're spending 3,000 a month? I mean, I know it's going to vary for sure, but I'm just curious, like, what does that path look like for them?
So I think what you have to do is you have to go into these, say, you give us a ceiling. So let's just take holiday, for example, right? We're getting more smaller ones than we normally get who just want to test it out and just see if they can move product during this time period. You'd go in, you go, okay, we want 3 grand. Obviously, holiday's a little different because we do like your always on holiday sale every Monday. And you have to like set the expectations with them of if you spend 3 grand, here's what you're spending on Google, here's what you're spending on Meta, right? You have to understand that I'm not going to spend that 3 grand unless we are at a 1 or we're at a 0.9 and you've never spent before. So to us, based on the other brands we've had at your level, that's a good thing, right? So you need to start at that point where it's like you're almost like making it up based on other things we've done if you're starting fresh. If you're coming into an account that has historicals, you take where they were at and be like, okay, well, we want to get better than this, obviously. And then as you progress, like during our 3 month trial, yeah, month one, if you're from scratch, like we're making it up. We're looking at those benchmarks. But then months 2 and 3, it's like you against you. It's okay, if we got October, which is a horrible month for D2C, if we got a 0.9 come holiday, like if we're not at a 1.5 because we're running a 20% off sale, like we need to scale things back. And let's agree on that's our number of stop, maintain, and scale. That like that 1.5, if we're above it, we're spending up to that 3 grand. If we're below it, we're going to pace things a little bit slower. So it's really just like figuring out like what your goals are, and like you need numbers to understand. But that first month is a little bit subjective because like some of them won't have the historicals.
Right, that makes sense. And when you're saying the number, you're like mentioning 1.9, 1.5. What can you tell me what that means?
Oh, I'm sorry. So that's the return on ad spend. To us, if you have a new brand that's breaking even in the first or second month, they have no data for us to go off of, no crib. We'll look at them and we'll go, hey, I know this isn't like changing your world right now, but not bad for a first month. And like none of these people know who you are. And we have to be more pessimistic and realistic with newer brands and like say that. There's ones we have that get like a 2 or 3. Like on Google, it's just sitting there. They have such a niche product. Nobody was bidding on it. There you are. They're looking for you. Great. That's insanely profitable. On the paid social side, you just happen to have like an interest or a behavior that Google, that Meta allows you to natively target. This is working really well, really fast, right? We've had a couple of those since the summer. But on the other end, like we're always going to be pessimistic and conservative because it's like it's your money and we need to prepare you for like what's probably going to happen. But yeah, that to me, it's just like at the beginning, those expectations are set on benchmarks. And then as you progress months 2 and 3, it's based on your historicals and where we think you can go. We have a brand we've had for a year that I love. And I'm not going to say the brand name. They're a dessert type brand. Their biggest selling points, it's 4th of July, it's Q4 during recipe season. The reality is like their buying cycle is different. Their seasonality is different. So we just met the other day. We're doing 2026. I'm like, guys, on the off months, we're going to spend 15% of what we normally spend month over month move all of that budget to these key moments. All the other months are just keeping the lights on, keeping people coming through. And then when you have those moments and you get to it, they're not going to be as aggressive or angry with you because you're figuring out how they don't waste your money. And then you're setting the realistic expectations of, hey, this didn't work, but I think this is going to work. This is what we're going to do moving forward.
Cross-flowing what I do from, and again, not to knock other agencies, I think agencies in general do a great job, and it's a hard job to do and a very stressful job to do. We've worked with many marketing agencies, with various different partnerships. But it's that the difference between what the salesman says when they're setting up the account versus what the account manager says when they're managing the account, and that doesn't always mesh, and that's
Right.
where it kind of falls apart. So I just really love hearing that. Even if of course there's a line to walk between being pessimistic and being real, but I think that that's such an important thing for long-term sustainability as an agency, and just having those great relationships for a really long time versus ones even irrelated to performance. It's that communication that's so important.
Can you share a concrete example where you tested or tweaked a campaign that led to performance improvement?
There's some Instacart campaigns or accounts we take over, and they're just running an automatic campaign. Instacart at this point, you get the all-in sales numbers. You can run a manual campaign, auto campaign, impulse style, still image display, video display, promotions. So that's been the big one this year that we come in. We're like, okay, where are they at? Their sales are stuck. Awesome. Okay, they have one automatic campaign. It's a 40% new to brand. They're not getting anybody new, and it's the same people buying over and over again. Instacart, we found a lot of really good ways to like maneuver the account setups that I think we're gonna have 3 of the fastest growing brands on Instacart. And then we came in and made it way more complex, built out the full funnel. Some brands are impulse brands that if I have X, Y, and Z in my cart, you show up, they buy it. There's just like plenty of things people were not leveraging that we took advantage
How
of.
how easy is it for new brands to get into Instacart?
If you work with us, we email a rep and you'll have an account in 24 hours. You give
Wow.
the rep and us the UPCs, the images. So we go into a lot of these and we find out they were never even connected with Instacart. It's either we go in and things are like night and day in a month because just spending dollars on Instacart and showing up is, if they're doing like $500, it's easy to get them from 500 to 1500. Then you go to 3 months later, 5. And
Instacart, I feel like it's a very overlooked place to have a campaign, or like you said, it might just be automatic, they're set up, they click or like set it and forget it. But to really
right.
run a campaign there, that's something that not a lot of people are talking about that I've seen. There's kind of a debate overall when it comes to ads on creative versus sale. How do we make them buy right now? Is that a balance that you have to strike brand to brand? Does it depend on the company, what direction you go, or do you kind of have a formula for that?
On a D2C side, let's say you have a humble budget, right? So it's like a smaller brand, which we've been using in a lot of these situations. I know that as the founder, you want everybody to know that you started this in your kitchen and you brought it here and did that. I hate to tell you, I don't really know if people are going to care about that, like where they are in the process. Maybe they'll get to your page and they're going to learn it, right? When you do websites, awesome. We got them in this way. They go to the page, they learn how authentic you are, a little bit more about the ingredients. Great. That's learning the brand. We got them in, they're interested in the product. We like UGC. With all these brands, like just showing real people what the real product is. You're getting rid of deception. You're pushing usage of the product, credibility of it. So I think on that side of it, that's the type of content that you want to push. Or they're on Shark Tank, this, that, please use that.
Mhm.
And then figuring out what works. You could insinuate something about the brand story, but they want to know benefits, costs, ingredients. So like you need to just test out those 3 or 4 pillars in the campaigns, and that's going to help you get the quick hitting purchases versus spending all these dollars on awareness that you don't have time for.
There's one brand that I worked with, and they literally had a different sale every single month, and that was like 90% of their ads. It looked almost like a discount brand when it was supposed to be like a pretty high-end skincare, company. Do you see brands that are just like having sales all the time is correct, or does it just kind of ruin your image after a while, especially if you're in that higher price range?
You don't want to have sales nonstop. There are times you have to be on sale. Like,
For sure.
how do you think you're going to get Black Friday sales if you're not on sale?
Yes.
Right?
Is there anything else that you want to share that you think could be helpful for CPG brands? in growing
I
their
do.
growing their startups?
If you are a smaller brand that's getting into retail, you have to spend money in what we're doing on the retail side. The retailers are expecting it, right? When you have to have your review with them, they're going to say, Target's going to go, what did you do for us? Walmart's going to say, what did you do for us? You have to show them that you're putting in an effort and you're investing. Two is if you do not spend on what we do on the retail side, you will not get any incremental sales. Nobody is going to find your product organically. That's my retail side of things. Wrap up. There are no shortcuts on the D2C side. Like, I don't want brands falling into that trap. I don't want them to think their agencies are doing a bad job because they're not presenting shortcuts to them every other time that they speak. So you have to stay the course on D2C. You have to just do things the right way, build your accounts, your campaigns, invest for long-term success, be patient. And on the retail side, at this point, like, you have to invest in this stuff to move your product and to really grow. And that would be my advice to food, beverage, CPG brands on how to approach our section of what we do.
Amazing. That was a really great wrap up. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming on to the show today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. That's another episode of Entrepreneur Mind Speak. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.